Hey everybody, this is Terry Matthews and you're watching this week's episode of Maximum Wage. This is the show where we tell you who's hiring in Philadelphia and how you can be better to get the job. This week, I have an awesome opportunity to talk with Mr. Ken Perry, and he's going to tell you about the phenomenal things he's been able to do with gaining employment, even with what some of you out there might consider a disability. We're going to see from his perspective what it's like to walk in his shoes. So Ken, Maximum Wage is a show where we talk about finding a job, especially here in Philadelphia. And right now today, I want to help our viewers see that irregardless of what people may think their challenges are in their life, I want them to understand that they're capable, right? The only person that's stopping them is actually them. So
Exactly.
Tell me a little bit about who Mr. Ken Perry is.
Other than the fact that I'm a native Philadelphian, born and raised in this area, and I've had the ability to travel a little bit, and I've been an accountant for almost 40 years. I'm also a martial arts instructor and a personal trainer.
Kung Fu fighting?
Exactly. Absolutely, yes.
Everybody was Kung Fu fighting.
Yes. I train both able bodies, but I also focus a lot on training people with disabilities, and I train other instructors how to train people with disabilities.
So what I found so unique about this situation, talk to me about where you're at today. You're in a wheelchair, and how long have you been in a wheelchair?
I've been using my chair primarily for the last 30-something years. I've used it as a tool prior to that as a wheelchair tennis player and a few other things. Mm-hmm. But I've had a disability since 1958, and so I've used canes, crutches, long leg braces, whatever it took to get me where I needed to be when I needed to be there.
Wait a second, I have to stop you right there. Did you just say tennis?
Yes.
Wait a minute. So we've heard martial arts thus far. We have heard tennis thus far.
Correct.
So, and we've heard 1958. We're here in 2016. So talk to our viewers a little bit about this, because again, I think this is absolutely amazing. As we've talked off camera, I have a child who has been diagnosed with autism, and although physically he can move around, there are a lot of things that he still is not able to do, right? And it's not that he's not able, it's being taught and getting past the part of he can't do because he doesn't understand or he doesn't have the ability to do so. So for me, you just shot that all the way out the window, right? And what I want to hear from you is from the perspective of going out to get employment. What was that like to be able to go out and get employment? Because when you send a resume in, people don't see you physically. They see a name. By the way, you have an awesome name, Ken Perry. And you shared this whole Ken situation. You're the modern Ken Barbie.
I'm the world's only living doll.
The world's only living doll. That's what it's about. So here we have Mr. Ken Perry, totally qualified via resume. And Mr. Ken Perry comes in for an interview. What have you had to deal with interviewing and getting past the stereotypes that may come with you since you're potentially using a wheelchair?
And that's exactly what it is. What people believe about people with disabilities versus what is the reality about that. I remember I had worked for one of the largest CPA firms in the world.
Hold on, largest CPA firm in the world. Did y'all hear that? Okay, I just want to make sure.
And the next job that I was going after, they actually were saying, well, we're not sure that we can handle your disability. Now, I must admit that this was prior to the ADA, and I understood that their heart was in the correct place. The problem was convincing them that the job I was applying for was driven by my intellect. It was not driven by the vessel that the intellect was contained in. Combine that with the fact that because I'm very, very comfortable in my skin, I'm very good at telling you what adaptations and accommodations I need in order to make myself available. And that is a huge problem for most folks with disabilities because unfortunately society has placed a certain level of reality or expectation on them.
Right.
And the challenge is to ignore those expectations and take inventory as to what you are and what is your belief and how comfortable you are in your skin and getting there. And once that happens, you basically can look anybody in the eye and say, I can do that. And then when you can say that, all of a sudden the person across the table can then believe that.
See, and I think that's a great point. I mean, what I believe is so great about what you said was the unfortunate part is the stereotype, right? And I've been on the HR side. I've been trained well to not discriminate. And although that you shouldn't discriminate against anybody, regardless of anything, we do know that that happens. So, for example, employer that might be interviewing someone, their issue is accommodation. But the need that you have for me is an intellectual-based need. It doesn't stop my ability to help you execute or get to your company's end results. If you want to grow your sales, I can help you. If you need somebody to help with finance, I can help you. If you need somebody to terminate or to manage processes and people, I can help you. Just because you're in a wheelchair or if somebody is, in leg braces or using canes or different things like that, does not mean that they can't help you. Because to your point, this is an intellectual thing. Doesn't mean you're not going to come to work on time, right? It doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to handle the responsibilities that are handed to you. It just means that you're going to do them differently. Exactly. And I think for employers who are potentially out there watching, I think that they need to understand that. And they need to really train their staff to understand that. And in addition to that, anybody who's living with some sort of physical disability, I think that they also need to understand to build themselves up and have a level of confidence in order to speak for what it is that they need. I mean, because we all get discriminated against, just differently, right?
Exactly.
So I heard you say something too that was pretty interesting. You said this was before ADA.
Yes.
Now, so since you've been out here working, tell me, do you see the difference now, before ADA and now after ADA, when it comes to an employer environment?
Yes. There's huge changes in the infrastructure that allows us more access. However, I don't believe that society has done a good job of fully implementing the things that they could that would increase the availability of work to people with disabilities. But the reality is, in a town like Philadelphia, which has been forced to come up with a promising ability to get people from point A to point B to get to work. There's a big thing now where accommodatable taxis are in and around the city. That's a big deal right now, and that
What about
will get better.
accommodatable Ubers? Have they done that yet?
Actually, you're more likely to get an accommodating Uber driver than you are to get a normal tag.
Wow.
Cab. There's a big battle. That's one of the reasons why this whole issue with Uber not being in the city legally is such a big deal. Ironically enough, if Uber was allowed to operate in the city of Philadelphia, you would increase the opportunity for people with disabilities to work.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Think about it. If I can drive with hand controls and I can drive my own vehicle, I can now sign up on the app and I can now make work.
I want to make sure too, again, that we're getting across to our viewers. And I know the answer to this, but I need people to hear the answer from you. Do you think, as an individual who might have a physical disability, is there anything that you do differently than anybody else? And if so, how?
There's nothing that I can't get done. I've been known to do some very strange things to get it done. I should also point out, I currently work in an office that's, I'd say, about 75% accessible. And I'm constantly telling my employer all the things that are wrong. And I point out that something that we run in that building that impacts the entire population is not adequately accessible to people with disabilities. And the bad thing is that whole thing is geared at getting jobs for people. I got to get these things out because they're really, really important.
No, and I want you to. And the reason why I asked that question that way is because I expected that answer from you. You're a very brilliant man, trust me, and I love spending this time talking with you. I just really, what might seem common sense to us is not common sense to everyone. And the biggest challenge is that it's like, wow, why would you even ask that question? But the reason why I want to ask that question is because people need to hear it. And sometimes when you don't have a physical disability, hearing it from somebody like me, it might not be respected or received the same. So I appreciate you being transparent.
It's fine.
So when we think about accommodations, right? We think about accommodations when you build buildings, you know, how the height of the sink or the turnaround space, the 360 radius, right? So from your perspective, even though somebody might say they're ADA compliant, just to be able to speak with your colleague can be a challenge. So your cubicle space or your office space might be accommodating, but employers need to understand is accommodations across everywhere, wherever
forced
you have
isolation.
to work. And as we go back to even being an employee and having an employer, the issues is that employers potentially could have some pretty solid, educated people come and work for them if they could get past the stereotypes associated with somebody who might have a physical disability.
And understanding the limits of the infrastructure inside their office and outside their offices. Infrastructure, in my opinion, is 50 to 60% of the barrier to most people with disabilities being able to work in this society.
Wow. Do you see individuals who might have a physical disability start businesses a lot more because of those infrastructure issues?
I see them wanting to. It's the chicken or the egg syndrome.
Okay.
You want to start your business, you don't have the capital.
Okay.
You have the capital, you know, it's like round and around.
So basically it's the same thing. And, you know, I don't want to sound like we're ignorant to this fact, but again, certain things that are common sense are not that all common, right? So here we are, same thing that you would have with anybody who didn't even have a physical disability. It's the chicken or the egg. You know, how do I get my business started? How do I handle these different types of things? But what I want people to know, especially about you, Ken, is that, you know, you dance. I got a chance to see a video of you dancing in a wheelchair. We've talked about you doing martial arts, playing tennis. You're definitely an advocate as much as you possibly can. And I think that, again, this goes to show employers that even if I am a small business owner that has a dance school or a martial arts place, that doesn't mean just because someone has a physical disability that they can't participate, that they can't partner, that they can't teach. And 9 times out of 10, teach or talk to a population of people that may not ever even give this an opportunity or shot, right?
Correct. The other side to this is if you have a business, remember, people with disabilities make up anywhere from 17 to 20% of the population of this country.
That's pretty big when you equate that to dollars and cents.
Exactly.
Right?
So to have a potential market that you can go into, and your problem is that you can't get them in the front door, or you assume that they can't do certain things.
Right.
How much have you, I mean, that's literally, if you thought of it this way, we're talking about approximately a fifth of the population of this country. If you think you have a head and 2 arms and 2 legs, would you cut off any one of them? That's about how much of your market you're cutting off.
Wow, that's a good perspective. I mean, honestly, even from being a business owner myself, I mean, that's a good perspective to have.
Let's judge what talents you bring, not what limitations are there.
Oh, I love it. That's a hashtag right there. That is definitely a hashtag. Because again, that's the piece. We're so focused on what we think is going to be a problem. We've created a problem before there is one. So again, if anybody's out there watching, our whole purpose, especially with this episode, is to say, listen, no matter what your physical elements are, if you are an employer, people need to be judged off of their intellect and their ability and their talent, and identify what they can help bring to your industry, and also how you can help bring education awareness and accommodations for individuals if you are employing people that have additional special needs. You know, this is a big world that we live in, and to understand that 1/5 of our population is potentially people that we are not even maximizing to work. That's a pretty sad case.
Oh.
And before I let you go, I want to ask you a question. How have you dealt with discrimination or ignorance in reference to either A, in interviews, or maybe getting a new position and having to deal with your coworkers? Because sometimes I've seen situations where, you know, you're working with someone, they have an attitude because either A, this person who's needed accommodations is late, or they feel some kind of way because they feel like they get, you know, special treatment. Not recognizing that these are accommodations made given the physical disability that they may have. So how do you deal with that?
Well, there's two parts to it. There's one, the mental preparation, making sure that you're prepared to deal with it and knowing that it's real. I operate from a very simple assumption. An intelligent person wouldn't insult me and an ignorant person can't.
Whoa. Repeat that again. Rewind.
Yeah, and an intelligent person wouldn't insult me and an ignorant person can't. Therefore, I'm always sitting here understanding, all right, you're going to say some stuff and you either meant it maliciously, in which case I'll ignore you,
Absolutely.
or you said it and you were, you know, just trying to get to a different place and I'll help you get there.
Right.
The second part of that is once you understand that you have a right to occupy this space, you have to explain, as you would, as an able-bodied would as well, that I'm qualified. In my case, I've got a bachelor's, I've got a master's, I've got experience. You're going to be hard-pressed to find somebody that brings more to the table than I am. And if I'm comfortable in my skin, they're going to feel that. And they're going to make the judgment based on my character, not on the wheelchair.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much. I've learned so much more from you today. And if anything, it's continued to expand my thought process and how even I make sure that, you know, I operate in transparency and continue to encourage employers and individuals who are dealing with some sort of disability to, listen, you don't have to sit at home and click the TV button. You are able as long as you are able and willing to.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ken.
Thanks for your time.
Very nice to meet you. So that's all we have this week. Thank you for tuning in to My New Philly, where something's always new and everything is always Philly.